OnlyFans has changed the business model of being naked online. Now, the company wants to build a different kind of social media platform, one that's not reliant on advertising and personalized algorithms. Keily Blair, CEO of OnlyFans, sat down with the Wall Street Journal to discuss her plan to build the world's safest digital platform, and why she thinks some banks still use an outdated risk model. What did you do for work before you joined OnlyFans, and how did you land here?
My OnlyFans origin story is quite different from that of most UK and US tech CEOs. So before I joined OnlyFans, I was a partner at a law firm, and I led their cybersecurity, online safety, and privacy practice. So not the typical background for a tech company CEO. But what I found was that actually my background in law really put me in a unique position to lead the business, because in terms of the biggest risks that face tech and social media companies presently, it's regulation.
I want to talk a little bit about the platform design and what makes it different from some of the other social platforms out there. To start, I think the search function is not the most user-friendly.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
So OnlyFans is very different by design from other platforms. And a lot of that is because we follow safety by design principles when we think about platform architecture and structure. Search function is a great example of one of those things. So we don't have highly personalized content algorithms on OnlyFans. You're not going to get a bunch of suggested creators that is specially curated for you to try and encourage you to spend more time on the platform, because we believe that users, as well as creators, should also have control. So users should be able to choose who they subscribe to. You shouldn't be bombarded with content constantly trying to keep you online more. Same with no advertising, same with no data monetization. In order to search for a creator on OnlyFans, you need to know their exact username to be able to find them. You can't search by genre, you can't search by first name or last name. The only thing you can search for is their username. And the reason for that is actually because we've found historically across the internet that when broad search terms are applied, people can seek to abuse those to promote content that is illegal or harmful or things along those lines. Whereas if somebody genuinely wants to subscribe to a creator, they will know their username already and they'll be able to find them.
I've seen you talk a lot about how you want to create a different type of social media, and you can see that in how OnlyFans is designed today. Has the site always been like that, or have those sort of design features come in over time?
Some of the design features were there from the beginning. The 80-20 monetization split was there from the beginning. The same with creators owning their own content and being able to remove their content when they see fit rather than the content belonging to us. We've certainly evolved and at a more sophisticated position on advertising and on privacy over time. Because we're open about the fact that we host adult content, we recognize that we have a duty to control for the risks associated with that. So a lot of our platform features are designed with that in mind. Now, a lot of other social media platforms will say adult content is against their terms of service, but their platforms are full of adult content. And so by definition, they're therefore not designing for that risk.
Another thing I find really interesting about the business is that it's managed to be incredibly successful without being an actual app. Would you ever consider putting OnlyFans on the App Store, or is that something you're comfortable operating without?
I think the 30% payments piece is a barrier to us joining the App Store. It doesn't make sense from a corporate and commercial perspective to give up that amount of revenue. Not being on the App Store has not had a negative impact on growth. If you think we now have 4 million creators, 300 million fans worldwide, I struggle to see the upside, I guess, at this stage. Perhaps in the beginning it may have been different, but again, it was a financial decision at that time, and now it's very much a where's the need.
The US and Canada and the UK are very big markets for OnlyFans. Are there any locations that you want to expand into, and what does that look like?
When we look at new geographies to bring on board, the key thing is, are we going to be able to verify their identity with a high degree of success, and are we able to pay them safely? So that is tricky in some more emerging markets, candidly. So that makes those markets harder to operate. And with fans, it's simply a question of can they make payments safely on the platform when we look at new geographies. So it's very opportunistic. It's very much, where creators are, can we open that market? Are we getting more requests to open a market in a particular way or make a change in a market, for example? So in Brazil, last year, we introduced an alternative payment method called Pix, which is a local payment method only for Brazil, to better enable creator and fan payments on the platform.
Within the financial industry, it is difficult for a lot of adult entertainment companies to work with these institutions. So I'm curious how you take on that risk and how you mitigate that.
There is a perception, certainly within payments and financial services, that certain industries are higher risk just by virtue of what they do. So adult content industries, crypto, cannabis, things along those lines are traditionally classed as high-risk merchants. That is a very unsophisticated view of risk. And so actually at OnlyFans, we've invested heavily in putting into place market-leading safety controls around our platform, around the payments infrastructure on our platform, around the content that's on our platform. And for that reason, we've been able to communicate and to be transparent with financial services providers and payment providers about, what is the unmitigated risk that's left there. So we have ended up working with people who traditionally have not worked with those industries as a result of the fact that they are now confident in our safety controls. We invest heavily in our payments process. So we spend a lot of time and effort building a global payments network to enable our creators to withdraw their funds in the jurisdiction that they live in.
Is there a risk that, say, maybe in the future the leadership of one of the banks that you're working with changes, somebody comes in and says, I don't want this bank working with OnlyFans?
I think there's always a risk if you work in a business which is polarizing. You could say the same thing with oil and gas. And you can say the same thing with green energy or DE&I policies. Attitudes and risks and risk tolerance shift over time. We're definitely seeing that in terms of the adult content space, seen that in terms of crypto. If you think about 5 years ago, nobody would invest in crypto. Now you've got major traditional financial services institutions heavily invested in crypto, for example. So attitudes change and shift over time.
What are the biggest threats to safety on OnlyFans right now?
I think it's not really just an OnlyFans issue, it's an everybody issue. I think that in terms of the biggest threats that exist for user-generated content platforms, it would be AI-generated content that is generated either without respect for copyright or without respect for consent. That is an issue for user-generated content platforms. And if you were to ask me for like a magic bullet tool to fix it, I would love if there was a really effective tool that was able to identify whether an image was artificially generated. There are plenty of tools that exist in the market now which claim they are able to do that. They're not effective, and they're certainly not evolving at the pace that AI-generated image technology and software is developing. So that would be wonderful. I mean, all of our content is reviewed by our team of human moderators anyway, but that would help people to be able to more quickly triage what they believe to be artificially generated content that may not be of the creator.
I'm actually really curious how you think about AI-generated chat. A big portion of the revenue comes from these a la carte purchases. Some of those are direct messages. How are you thinking about, if someone were to hire an agency or hire a freelancer who then just can AI generate chat that goes back and forth?
There's no AI chat plugin you can use to be able to chat to your fans on OnlyFans. Each creator runs their business in a way that they see fit, and they're going to use third parties to help them do that, whether it's a photographer, a camera person, a clip editor, personal trainer, variety of different things to help them to run their account. We don't, as a matter of policy, allow AI chatbots to be utilized to manage the account. Can people cut and paste AI-generated content from ChatGPT into OnlyFans? Of course they can, but in the same way that I could do that with my work now. And we can all do that across the space. We don't have those tools integrated for creators to use natively in the platform.
What are some of the challenges that you face when it comes to thinking about bringing in outside investment?
We don't want to bring in outside investment.
No plans to go public?
No plans to go public, no. There's no need to. We don't need the outside investment, in truth. The only reason why people typically go public is because they need capital, and we have capital. So there's no driver for us to go public.
I'm really curious about this balance that you have to toe as a person in your position. On the one hand, you are empowering adults to profit off of their sexuality if they choose to. And on the other hand, even though the platform is 18 plus, there is a wider cultural conversation around OnlyFans, and people who might not be 18 know that you can make a lot of money on OnlyFans through selling explicit content. And, they may think, oh, that's a lucrative career path. How do you personally think about that?
I think as a society, having a better and more open conversation about sexuality is incredibly important. That conversation needs to be age appropriate. The reality is that sexuality is part of the human experience. I don't think people only see things that are sexy on OnlyFans. You know, look at fashion, perfume, cars, film, Hollywood. I mean, to say that this is an OnlyFans issue is not, I think, entirely fair. I think humans are sexual beings in a lot of cases. What's very important, though, is that we are mindful about where and how we turn up. We've turned down sponsorship activities on the basis of having a youth group or a youth element to them. When we think about our own social media advertising strategies, we give specific limits. So our Instagram strategy, for example, our X strategy, we will say demographically, it needs to be over 21, it needs to be over 25. Please don't put this in front of minors, because we don't want minors on our platform at all. We're very clear about that. And so, you know, we do what we can and what's within our control to be able to ensure that it's an age-appropriate conversation.
What has it been like for you to, you know, go from being a lawyer to now a CEO of a social media platform to now you're talking Netflix deals? What have you learned from being in the content world?
My conversations at the school gates are very different. When I was a lawyer, I used to have the most boring job at the dinner parties. And so when people would ask you, you know, what do you do? And you go, I'm a lawyer, they'd be like, next. Whereas now if I say, you know, I'm the CEO of OnlyFans, people go, oh, I know someone who did this. Or, oh, I read this story about that. Or I saw this podcast when. And so it's an incredible insight into people's viewpoints, whether they're pro-OnlyFans, whether they're anti-OnlyFans, whether they're pro-sex work, anti-sex work, whether they see it as an entertainment platform or just adult entertainment. They've actually watched it through MMA or comedy or any of the other verticals where OnlyFans is now present.
So many people have such a strong opinion about the company that you're running. How do you hold that personally?
Okay, I will confess that if I don't want to have the conversation, I may still say I'm a lawyer. But more often than not, I do want to have the conversation, because I don't think you can do this job unless you feel incredibly passionately about the business that you run and you're interested in how other people feel about it too. One of the things I say to our team all the time is if you can't talk about the business with pride and with passion, and you can't listen to people's concerns with empathy, you're probably in the wrong job. Because that's part of your role in the business, is kind of to be willing to have those conversations. But occasionally, if I've had a long day, I will just say I'm a lawyer.